On a morning carved into meetings and money, billionaire Ethan Cole let his 6-year-old tug him toward a sidewalk secret, a shivering girl clutching a one-armed doll and wearing shoes she slept in. One question, "Daddy, why is she sleeping here?" split his controlled life like glass. He picked her up. He broke his schedule. He opened his door halfway, and everything rushed in. A missing mother, a hotel manager with teeth behind a smile, and a choice that would cost more than money. This is the day a fortress learned to leave the door half open. The morning had been ordinary enough for billionaire single dad Ethan Cole. He was the man everyone in the city seemed to know, his name splashed across business journals, his photo in glossy magazines, his wealth the subject of endless fascination. Yet for all the talk of power and money, Ethan lived a life of strict control where every minute was accounted for, every meeting arranged down to the second. That day had been no different until his 6-year-old daughter, Chloe, tugged at his hand outside a downtown cafe. She pointed toward the edge of the street, where a girl, no older than 7, curled against the wall, her tiny frame wrapped in an oversized sweater, her face streaked with dirt and exhaustion. "Daddy," Chloe whispered, her big green eyes full of confusion. "Why is she sleeping here?" Ethan paused. His instinct was to move along, to shield Chloe from the hard truths of the world. He'd always told himself that was what parents did. They protected their children from the ugliness. But something in Chloe's voice, in the innocent ache of her question, cut deeper than he expected. He looked again at the girl. She wasn't just napping in the sun. She was shivering, her lips pale. A battered backpack sat beside her, its zipper broken, spilling out a doll missing an arm and a crumpled juice box. She looked too frail, too still. Chloe tugged again. "Daddy, she's cold. Can't we help?" Ethan swallowed hard. He was a man used to negotiations worth millions, yet he found himself unable to answer a simple plea from his daughter. He crouched beside the girl, his tailored suit brushing against the dirty sidewalk. Gently he asked, "Sweetheart, where are your parents?" The girl stirred, blinking slowly, but she didn't speak. Instead, her small hand clutched the broken doll as though it were the only thing keeping her tethered to the world. Chloe's eyes filled with tears. "Daddy, she needs us." And in that moment, something inside Ethan cracked. He scooped the girl up, ignoring the strange looks from passers-by, and carried her to his car. Chloe slid in beside her, holding the girl's hand with the seriousness only children seem to possess. Ethan wrapped her in his jacket, already dialing the family doctor. As the car pulled away, Chloe whispered, "She can stay with us, right? Just until she's better?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. His world was built on boundaries and contracts, yet here was his daughter asking him to open their lives to a stranger. But when he looked into the girl's hollow eyes reflected in the rearview mirror, he knew Chloe was right. Taking her home would change everything. And Ethan Cole, the billionaire who had spent years building walls around himself, sensed, for the first time, that maybe those walls were about to come down. Ethan Cole's life had never allowed for surprises. He had built his empire on the backbone of precision, every dollar invested wisely, every opportunity calculated with ruthless foresight. Yet nothing about the girl asleep on the sidewalk could be rationalized into numbers or spreadsheets. Her presence struck him like a storm he hadn't prepared for, messy and inconvenient, the kind of storm that could wash away the walls he'd built. And somehow, deep in his chest, he didn't mind. The morning had been ordinary enough for billionaire single dad Ethan Cole. He was the man every glossy profile pretended to know, numbers that made headlines, a face that could sell a magazine cover, a calendar carved into clean, quiet rectangles of time. He liked things organized, predictable, contained. His driver always arrived 4 minutes early. His espresso always stopped at a precise line of crema. His meetings began on the dot, or they didn't happen at all. He'd learned to live that way after the accident, when predictability felt like the last thread tying him to the world. But then his 6-year-old daughter, Chloe, tightened her small hand around his, and tilted her face up to him with a question that would not be scheduled or contained. "Daddy, why is she sleeping here?" He followed Chloe's gaze to the girl curled against the brick wall just outside the cafe. She might have been 7, maybe 8. If you measured her age by the stare in her eyes, she was wrapped in an oversized gray sweater with sleeves that slid past her fingers. The cuff of the sweater had torn, the edges were dirty, pilled. A threadbare backpack slumped beside her like a folded animal, a broken zipper bearing the open mouth of its belly. Inside he saw a crumpled juice box, a plastic hairbrush missing half its bristles, a cloth doll with one arm stitched on with mismatched thread. The girl's face was both fragile and stubborn, as if she had decided being small was temporary. Chloe stepped closer. "She's cold," she whispered, as if that were an intimate fact about the day no one else had noticed. "We should give her my jacket." Ethan's instinct was to shepherd Chloe away, to protect her version of the world in which sidewalks were for walking and beds were warm and safe. He had built so many protections for her since Claire's death, like invisible guardrails around everything they did, that, it sometimes seemed, Chloe lived in a glass house with a view of the horizon, but no wind. He'd promised himself it was the right choice. 6-year-olds should not be tasked with understanding what adults had failed to fix. But the girl's lips were pale. Shivering traveled through her like a small animal. And Chloe's voice, God, the ache in it, cut through his certainties like wire through paper. Ethan crouched, letting his expensive suit brush the grit. "Sweetheart," he said softly, "what's your name?" The girl's eyes drifted open, wary and wide. She took him in, the suit, the polished shoes, the careful voice, and then she looked at Chloe, who was already unwinding her scarf like a brave little bird making a nest. The girl's voice came out a rasp. "Maya!" "Hi, Maya," Chloe said, earnest and bright. "I'm Chloe. Do you want my scarf? It's soft." Maya hesitated, as if politeness could be dangerous. Then she nodded once. Chloe looped the scarf gently around her neck, patting it into place with the fierce authority of the very kind. Ethan's chest tightened. He hadn't planned for this, but planning felt irrelevant. "Maya," he murmured, "where are your parents?" Maya's fingers tightened around the broken strap of her backpack. She glanced at the street as if it might supply the answer. "Mom was supposed to meet me," she said at last. "We were at the shelter last night, but we had to leave after breakfast. She went to find a job." She said to wait. She was late before, but not this late. Her voice dropped. "It got loud in the shelter last night. We couldn't sleep. I had to keep my shoes on." Something hot and helpless flared under Ethan's ribs. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her without thinking. "Have you eaten?" Maya shrugged the way children do when they've stopped expecting yes to be an option. "Had cereal early. It was the kind that hurts your mouth." Chloe looked at Ethan again, a small captain issuing orders. "We should feed her." He stood and did the one thing he knew how to do. He took responsibility. He sent a quick text to Nora, his assistant, telling her to move his morning meetings, then called the family doctor and said, "I need you waiting at the house. A child, hypothermia risk. I want food ready, blankets." He didn't ask permission from the day or the city or his past. He scooped Maya up as gentle and certain as if he had been carrying her since she was born, and opened the car door with his foot. Chloe climbed in beside her, setting her own small hand firmly over Maya's. It was decided. "Daddy," Chloe said as they pulled into traffic, "she can stay with us until we find her mom, right? We can share." Ethan's mouth opened with an answer he meant to shape into a careful explanation of temporary help and the proper authorities. Then he saw their hands in the rearview mirror, a small web of skin and trust across the leather seats. "Until we find her mom," he said, surprising himself with how completely he meant it. "She's with us." He had never driven home so fast without breaking a single law. The townhouse bent around them like a relieved breath. Warm wood, soft lamps, quiet art. Maya's eyes skittered over everything like a kid in a museum, afraid to touch. afraid something would be taken from her just for looking too long. Dr. Fernandez met them in the foyer. She was capable and kind, with the calm hands of someone who never startled. Ethan loved that about her. It had helped more than he could say the night Claire didn't come home, the night the world tore and no one could fix it. "We've got you," Dr. Fernandez murmured to Maya, guiding her to the sofa and wrapping a heated blanket around her shoulders. "I'm just going to take your temperature and check your heart, sweetheart. Is that okay?" Maya nodded, eyes on the window, as if escape required attention. Chloe sat close but carefully, a small guard dog without bark or bite. Ethan made tea with hands that never made tea. He poured hot chocolate, with a concentration he usually reserved for nine-figure deals. The doctor's assessment was quick: mild dehydration, low blood sugar, chilled to the bone, no signs of acute illness. Exhaustion. Food, rest, warmth, Dr. Fernandez concluded, not looking at Ethan but somehow saying the words to his nerves. "And we'll need to loop in Child Protective Services. We can do that through the family liaison you used after Claire. You'll be a temporary placement if they approve for a day or two while we find Mom. It's doable." "Doable," Ethan repeated, like a promise he could keep. Maya ate slowly, carefully, as though each bite could be used against her. She checked Chloe's face before accepting anything, the way children check the sky before deciding whether the weather will change on them. Chloe told Maya the names of the houseplants and introduced her to Mrs. Button, the cat, who was very fat and very judgy. Maya smiled, a flicker, then gone, but real. After lunch, Maya fell asleep in a guest room upstairs with the blinds half open. Chloe curled up on the rug beside the bed with her markers and started drawing the room as if she could keep the moment from slipping by. Ethan stood in the doorway and watched them both. His mind processed the next steps, the way it always did. People to call, a plan to make, a world to steady. He called Nora first. "Already on it," she said. "I spoke with CPS. We have a liaison meeting in 2 hours by video. They need basic info. Maya's last known location, the shelter name if she told you, description of Mom. I also ran a search on missing persons in a 50-mile radius. Nothing yet." He told Nora about the shelter and the cereal, about the shoes. He gave her the few strands of story he had, and she braided them into a preliminary file. Then he called a different number, one he hadn't dialed since the adoption interview he and Claire started, and then abandoned when Claire got pregnant with Chloe, legal aid, and then Amara Singh. "You're calling me about a kid," she said, instead of, "Hello, I can hear it." "Her name is Maya," he said. "We found her alone on a sidewalk. Her mom was supposed to meet her after a job search. I don't want this to end up as another case swallowed by the system." "It won't. Not if we move fast," Amara said. "We need to find the shelter, talk to whoever saw them last, ping the hospitals and lockups. Some people get swept up for sleeping in public or shoplifting food. We'll put boots on the ground. I'll fund whatever you need. That's not the part that scares me, Ethan. The part that scares me is why a mother told a 7-year-old to wait alone and didn't come back. Find the why, and you find the path." He took in a breath that didn't help. "Do it." After the calls, he went back to the guest room. Maya slept with her hand fisted in the blanket like a child rides a horse, one last handhold against falling. Chloe's drawing had become a careful map of the bed, and the turtle-shaped nightlight, and the way light fell on the floor. She didn't look up. "If I finish fast," she whispered, "I can start a new one for her to keep." "You're doing perfect," he said, and meant it with everything in him. The CPS video call happened at the dining table, with Dr. Fernandez present, because Ethan wanted a witness who knew both children and him. The liaison, a woman named Rosalind, had a calm face like a school librarian who could outstare a hurricane. "You know this is temporary," she said, not unkindly. "We can approve emergency placement until we locate Mom." "I understand," Ethan said, and did, but something in him bucked against the word temporary, as if the ground itself had tilted. Rosalind asked questions gently, Maya's demeanor, any indications of neglect or abuse, any medical concerns. Dr. Fernandez answered the clinical parts. Ethan described the scarf and the cereal and the shoes. He did not talk about the way Maya's eyes refused to settle in a room full of safety. He didn't have a box on the form for that. "We'll dispatch someone to the last shelter she remembers and check nearby hospitals and precincts," Rosalind said. "If Mom can be reached, we'll get eyes on her today. In the meantime, keep Maya warm and fed. Let her rest." After the call, Ethan stayed at the table alone, staring at the bowl of fruit like it could reveal a secret. The last time the house had gained a child unexpectedly, he had carried Chloe across this threshold in arms that still smelled like Claire's shampoo. He had promised Chloe then, without words because she was too small to understand, that he would build a world where she could sleep with her shoes off and her heart unafraid. He had done it by making the world smaller. Today, it had blown open. Maya woke late afternoon with the wary alertness of kids who have learned adults sometimes yell when they wake up. She blinked at the room, reached for her backpack, and then stilled when she saw the turtle nightlight glow. "You slept," Chloe announced from the doorway like a happy bailiff. "We made mac and cheese. Daddy burns toast, but he's okay at stirring. Come eat." Maya slid her feet to the floor without letting go of her bag. "Can I keep this light?" "You can keep it for forever," Chloe said with the authority of someone who believed in forever like oxygen. They ate at the kitchen island. Maya perched on a stool like a bird on a wire. She used the fork carefully, like it was expensive, which in fairness it was. Ethan watched the way she stared at her second helping like a promise she wasn't sure she had permission to accept. He remembered hunger like an old language. His had been emotional after Claire, a gray vacancy, but hunger knew hunger when it saw it. After dinner, Maya left her dish exactly where she'd found it, perfectly centered on the placemat, as if anything else would be a mistake. Chloe showed her the guest bathroom as if it were a museum exhibit with a theme of warm water and clean towels. "You can take a bath," Chloe said solemnly. "We have bubble stuff. It smells like oranges. I can sit outside the door if you want so you're not lonely." Maya stood in the doorway as if baths were a storybook thing. "Do I have to give the water back?" "Only down the drain," Chloe said, unconcerned. "That's where it lives." Ethan stood at the end of the hall and pretended not to listen as the girls negotiated the logistics of bubbles. He heard the first small laugh from Maya, like an answered prayer he hadn't been brave enough to make. When Maya went to sleep that night, she lay with her whole body tense, and then, only after Ethan turned away, he felt the vibration of her voice like a moth. "You won't close the door all the way, right?" He turned back. "Half open," he said, moving it precisely to the midpoint, "like this." She watched the door. "Half open is safe." He stood in the hall, long after her breath evened out. He whispered to himself, "Then half open it will be." Downstairs in the quiet, Nora's name lit up his phone. "Update," she said. "The shelter, Hillside, confirmed mother and child checked out at 8 a.m. Mother's name, Lena Hart, 28. Formerly employed at Harbor Grand Hotel housekeeping. Lost employment 3 weeks ago after what the shelter director called a dispute with management. She's on a wait list for transitional housing. No hospital matches yet. No arrest records in the last 24 hours, at least under her name." "What do we know about the hotel dispute?" "I've already pinged a contact at the Grand. Manager on duty was a man named Victor Lane. There have been whispers about him, pressure, power games, petty infractions inflated into termination reasons. HR says she was accused of stealing a guest's bracelet. No police report. Internal matter. She denied it. Security cameras from the hallway malfunctioned that day." Ethan closed his eyes because the pattern was too familiar. Power that didn't leave fingerprints. "Find out if she filed any complaints. And, Nora, we're going to need Amara looped in on employment law, not just family placement." "Already done," Nora said, a smile tucked into her voice. "You're predictable in all the right ways, boss." "Not predictable enough," he said, and looked toward the stairs. The second day began like the first ended. with half-open doors and anxious sunlight. Chloe insisted on making Maya pancakes. Ethan supervised with the level of oversight generally reserved for million-dollar prototypes. The first pancake was raw in the middle and burned on the edges, a perfect metaphor for love. Maya chewed carefully, then smiled. "It tastes like warm." Dr. Fernandez returned to check on her and pronounced her steady but tired. CPS called with an update. Still no mother, but multiple eyes on the search. Rosalind's voice sounded tired in the way of people who don't get to be tired. "We'll find her," she said. "It's just that sometimes the why takes longer than the where." That afternoon Amara arrived, shaking off a spring rain from her jacket, like a warrior coming into camp. She had the kind of presence that made people tell her things they hadn't planned to reveal. Soft voice, sharp eyes. "I spoke with 2 former employees at the Harbor Grand," she said at the kitchen table, while Chloe and Maya drew. "Both women left within the year. Neither filed official complaints, but they described Lane as entitled. A pattern of targeting single moms, changing schedules last minute, docking pay for made-up infractions, cornering them with friendly hand on shoulder that lingered too long. No one went to HR because HR reports to him." "Did Lena report theft to the police?" Ethan asked. "No, she couldn't risk being the one investigated. Anyone she might have leaned on is already barely hanging on. But I did speak with the shelter director again. He said Lena seemed distracted the last few days, like she was watching the door even when no one walked through it. That could mean nothing, or it could mean she felt followed." "Let's assume the worst until we prove otherwise," Ethan said. "I'll call in a security consultant quietly. If Lane has a pattern, we're going to find it." Maya and Chloe wandered into the conversation like satellites. Maya kept her eyes on her paper but spoke. "Mom said the mean man said nice words that smelled wrong. She told me to stay away from him when he smiled." Ethan felt something cold and precise settle in him. There were parts of the world he pretended could be handled by other people. Shelters, social workers, good intentions. He was done pretending. He rose. "I'm going out," he said to Nora, who had dropped by with color-coded folders that made Ethan's late mother's heart proud. "Cover me." "Already on your calendar," Nora said cheerfully. Slot labeled, "Go be a battering ram." Harbor Grand Hotel's lobby exhaled money. White marble, orchids, expensive silence. Victor Lane wore a suit that tried too hard and an expression that assumed everyone wanted something from him. When Ethan introduced himself, Lane's posture changed the way men change when they realize someone could end them without raising their voice. "How can we help you, Mr. Cole?" he asked, eyes already calculating how this interaction could be used for his advancement. "You can answer questions," Ethan said, and motioned to the quiet lounge off the lobby. When Lane hesitated, Ethan smiled with all his teeth. "Or we can do this here, where my voice carries." Lane followed. Once seated, Ethan folded his hands and let silence do the first pass. Lane fidgeted. "I'm looking for a former employee," Ethan said at last. "Lena Hart. Terminated 3 weeks ago." Lane shrugged. "Housekeeping. Poor performance. That's all." "Not the story I have. I have a story about a manager who tripped the wire of his own ego and tried to use his position to turn no into yes." Ethan slid a paper across the table, a printed copy of an anonymous review from an employee forum describing Lane's pattern in careful, terrified words. "I have a review dated 6 months ago that describes, among other things, a missing bracelet and a sudden termination." Lane flinched, just enough to confirm the thing he wanted to hide. "Anonymous slander," he sputtered. "Disgruntled ex-workers. You know how it is." "I do," Ethan said. "I know how men like you hide inside plausible deniability. I also know how cameras malfunction when someone important needs them to. I own 3 floors across town where cameras never malfunction. I can donate a grant for updated security infrastructure here, or I can fund a story about the pattern you've built with names attached. 2 former employees are already willing to talk to my attorney. They have screenshots. They kept messages you sent late at night. Do you see how this ends, Mr. Lane?" Lane's mouth twisted. You think because you have money? I think because I have a daughter, Ethan said, and stood. I think because there's a 7-year-old who slept with her shoes on. Where is Lena? Lane hesitated. For men like him, silence was either a negotiation tactic or a cover. His eyes flicked to the elevators, then to the street outside, then to Ethan's hands, which were calm and empty. He swallowed something oily. She came by 2 days ago, he said finally, begged for her job back. I told her no, she left. Then we'll check the security footage. You didn't malfunction that day, Ethan said. And we'll pull the footage from across the street and the corner bodega and the bus stop. If you followed her, if you had someone follow her, we'll see it. Now's your last chance to tell me everything before my people dig it up without your help. Lane stared. Sweat pricked his hairline. You can't threaten me. I haven't threatened you, Ethan said. I've described the weather. He left Lane sitting in the shape of a man whose world had been measured and found wanting. In the days that followed, the city opened like a file. Video clips assembled into a timeline. Lena leaving the shelter with Maya. Lena dropping Maya at the cafe and walking east toward Harbor Grand. Lena entering the hotel. Lena leaving less than 10 minutes later, head down, pace fast. Her path a sharp line toward the subway, a uniformed security guard trailing her at a distance for 2 blocks and then turning away. After that, she vaporized. Amara found a thread in the steam of things, a woman named Marisol, who had worked in laundry at the Harbor Grand until she decided to take early leave after Lane cut her hours in half, when she refused his invitation for drinks. Marisol had Lena's number. It had been disconnected. She had one more thing. A photo of a group at a staff party last year, Lane in the center with his arm around 2 women, one of them, Lena, his hand too familiar on her waist. Find Marisol, Ethan said. Keep her safe. Subpoena Lane's messages. We don't have a case yet, Amara said. We only have a shadow. Then let's bring light. At home, light worked slower. Maya's second night in the house, she woke from a soundless nightmare and stood at the doorway with her blanket like a witness. Ethan was up, he often was, the habits of grief hard to unfurl, and saw her silhouette in the half-light. It's okay, he said softly. You can come in. She edged toward the couch where he sat with a book he wasn't reading. She didn't ask the things she wanted to ask. Instead, she dropped her blanket near his feet, as if claiming territory. He handed her a glass of water. Sometimes, she said finally, the dark is loud. He nodded. I know. When my wife died, the dark got loud for me, too. Maya studied him. How do you make it quiet? I sit with it, Yeshat, he said. I turn on a lamp. I listen to the refrigerator hum. I pet Mrs. Button until she remembers I belong to her. Maya glanced at the cat snoring on the back of the chair. She doesn't like me. She pretends she doesn't like anyone, he said, but she sits near the people she trusts. She's sitting near you now, even if she's pretending she's not. Maya leaned back until her shoulder brushed the chair. Mrs. Button opened one eye, then closed it again like a queen granting temporary pardon. Does it ever go away? Maya asked, watching the cat breathe. The loud? He said. Sometimes it gets soft, sometimes it comes back, but it's small now compared to the first days. The first days, I could only breathe because Chloe needed me to. Do you know what needing someone can do to the dark? What? It pokes holes in it. Maya nodded solemnly, as if cataloging this for future use. She slid down onto the rug and fell asleep there, her blanket wrapped around her like a cocoon. Ethan placed a pillow beneath her head and stayed on the couch until the blue hour rose. On the 3rd day, the world tilted. Nora called with that voice she saved for news that could not be padded. They found Lena, she said. She's at Metro General, ER. She was admitted last night with a concussion and dehydration. Someone brought her in anonymously. They left before the intake nurse could get a name. Is she awake? On and off. They have her listed as a Jane Doe because she didn't have ID. I confirmed via the shelter and the photo Amara obtained. Ethan, there's bruising, defensive marks. Someone hurt her. He stood in the kitchen so fast his chair tipped. I'm on my way. He paused only long enough to call Amara, then Rosalind. He collected the folder with the assembled documents of the last 3 days, names, times, addresses, as if truth could be stacked and carried like paper. Chloe met him at the door, hand in Maya's. "Where are you going?" "To find Maya's mom," he knelt. "Do you want to come, or do you want to stay here and draw a picture she can have when she wakes up?" Chloe looked at Maya. "Do you want to go see your mom?" Maya's fingers tensed on Chloe's. Then, a small nod. "If the door stays half open." "We can do that," Ethan said, and he had never been more certain of anything. Metro General smelled like coffee and bleach and the sharp metallic note of worry. Ethan moved through it like a man made for cutting through bureaucracies. He found Lena Hart asleep in a curtained-off space, her hair matted, her lip split. Her face was both softer and fiercer than he expected, with a cleft in her chin that made her look younger in profile. Maya stood at the foot of the bed like a soldier receiving orders from silence. "Mama," she whispered, and the word filled the whole room with a truth that pushed everything else aside. Lena's eyes opened, as if pulled by a string. It took a moment for them to find focus, and when they did, they filled with tears in a rush so swift she didn't seem to know how to stop it. "Maya," she said, gripping for her daughter's hand with both of hers, "my baby, my brave girl." Maya climbed onto the bed carefully, trying to locate the places that wouldn't hurt. She set her forehead against her mother's shoulder and did not let go. Ethan stood in the doorway and tried not to cry in front of strangers. "I'm Ethan Cole," he said when Lena looked up with a fierce, cornered animal's gratitude that is also an accusation. "Chloe and I found Maya yesterday. She's been with us." Lena's gaze flicked to Chloe, who offered a small wave like a pledge. Then she turned her attention to Maya again, as if someone could take her if she glanced away too long. "Thank you," she said to Ethan. The words sounded pulled from her throat with hooks. "I told her to wait for me at the cafe. I was going to come back. She swallowed the sentence like a knife. "I went to the hotel to ask for my job. He laughed at me. He said if I apologized, he'd think about it. Then he told me to meet him after his shift. I didn't, so—" She lifted her hands a little, as if to say, "You know what comes next." "You called the police?" Amara asked, her voice gentle. She had appeared beside Ethan so quietly he hadn't noticed. Lena shook her head. "I went to the precinct once before when he cut my hours. They told me to talk to HR. HR reports to him. I thought, if I could just get through one more week, I could move us into transitional housing and we'd be safe. I told Maya to keep her shoes on in case we had to move fast." She pressed her mouth against Maya's hair and breathed like a woman surfacing from a wreck. Amara nodded like a doctor nods when a patient names the pain. "You're safe now. We'll handle this from here." It shouldn't have felt like a vow. It did. The concussion was mild. The bruises weren't. The ER doctor signed off with instructions for rest and observation. CPS weighed Lena's capacity to parent in the moment against the need for Maya to be with her mother. Rosalind came to the bedside with the paperwork that would say yes. Temporary placement with Ethan until Lena could be discharged and a new plan formalized. A safety net built in 24 hours because people were looking and because money greased some wheels no one admitted needed grease. Lena signed the lines with a hand that shook. Maya held the pen steady for the last half of her name. "Come home," Ethan said before he could second-guess the words. "Just until you're well, and we make a plan. My house has room. My schedule can be moved. You shouldn't go back to the shelter tonight." Lena stared at him as if the sentence cost her something to accept. "You don't know us." "I know enough," he said. "I know the system moves faster when someone refuses to leave the room. Let me be that person, just for a while." Her jaw worked like a hinge being tested. She nodded once. Just for a while. The ride home was quiet in the way of rooms where someone is trying not to cry. Maya sat pressed into her mother like she could crawl back inside her. Chloe leaned against Ethan with the contentment of a child who believes adults can do anything. It turned Ethan's heart into both a fortress and an open field. In the house, Lena stood just inside the foyer with her arms around the suitcase Amara had bought her in the hospital gift shop, because someone once told Amara that people feel braver when their belongings are not carried in plastic bags. Lena surveyed the interior with the careful, instinctive calculus of someone who has learned to measure where danger hides in beauty. The floors were too clean, the corners too soft, the art too quiet. "I don't have shoes for inside," she said, looking at the rug as if it might judge her. "Then be our guest and ignore my mother's ghost," Ethan said. "She was the one who cared about shoes." Lena looked at him then properly, as if measuring not the house, but the man. "Thank you," she said. The thank you held an edge, a promise that gratitude wouldn't be the only thing she owed herself. He showed them the guest rooms and the bathroom with the orange-scented bubbles. Maya pressed her palm to the turtle nightlight again, like greeting a friend, and then led her mother through a tour of the house as if she'd lived there all her life. It made something behind Ethan's ribs turn over like a seal in water. While Lena rested, Amara sat up at the dining table like a general in a portable command center. Nora arrived with food and legal pads and the good kind of gossip. "Lane went to ground," she said, "which tells us we hit something. HR is suddenly very willing to cooperate. They're getting ahead of the story. 2 more former employees have come forward to Amara with texts and emails. And the security footage we pulled from the bodega across the street shows a man tailing Lena after she left the hotel. We haven't ID'd him yet, but his build matches a grand security contractor." "Bring them all in," Amara said. "We'll file a restraining order tonight. Tomorrow, we file the civil complaint. The DA will do what the DA does, but we'll make it easier for her to do the right thing." Ethan watched the machine of justice grinding into motion, the one powered by money and access and people like Amara and Nora who knew how to aim. He felt grateful and also slightly ashamed, the way you feel when you open a locked door and realize it was locked only for some people, not for you. That night he knocked on the guest room door, half open. "Come in," Lena said. She was sitting on the edge of the bed with her hair still damp from a shower. Purple and blue marked her skin like clouds. Maya was asleep with her hand tangled in her mother's shirt. "You need anything?" Ethan asked. Lena shook her head, then hesitated. "Do you ever get used to people being kind for no reason?" she asked. "It makes me feel like I stole something." "Maybe kindness is the only thing we're allowed to shoplift," he said before he thought better of it. She snorted and then winced, touching her lip. "I don't know how to be here," she said quietly, looking at the tidy room, the folded blankets, the stack of children's books Chloe had placed in a perfect pile. "I don't know how to let my daughter sleep without shoes on." "Then we'll learn," he said, "and if you need to keep the door half open, we'll do that forever." Her face softened into something that made him feel like the first day of spring. "What happened to your wife?" she asked, not unkindly, but like a person piecing together the story of a house. "Car accident," he said. 3 years ago next month." "I'm sorry." "Me too." She looked at her hands. "I used to have a plan. I used to know who I was in it. Then I was off the map." He leaned on the doorframe. "You're not off it. You just took a route that wasn't on the brochure." He paused. "Let us be a detour. For a while." Her mouth curved. "For a while," she agreed, and turned off the lamp. In the morning the house felt less like a museum and more like a camp. The girls made a fort under the dining table with blankets. Mrs. Button investigated and then declared the fort beneath her station. Lena shuffled into the kitchen in borrowed socks and sat at the island with her hands wrapped around a mug. The bruises looked worse today, because that's what bruises do before they get better. Ethan made eggs and didn't burn them. "I don't know how to repay you," Lena said, as if the sentence itself were proof she wanted to. "Please don't," he said. "Just let me help until help isn't needed." "It's not that I have a problem with help," she said slowly. "It's that too many people give it like they're buying a piece of you." He nodded. "I'm not buying anything." "What are you doing then?" "Standing beside," he said. Her eyes lifted. She regarded him for a long beat, like someone deciding whether a bridge could hold. "Okay," she said at last. "Beside." Amara arrived mid-morning with papers to sign and a box of donuts the size of the hat. "Bad days require sugar," she said, then walked Lena through the restraining order request, the affidavits, the complaint. Lena signed with her head up, not like someone begging for protection, but like someone acknowledging what was owed. The hearing moved at the speed of pressure. It was held in a windowless room that smelled like old coffee and dust sheened with fluorescent light. Ethan sat in the back beside Chloe, who was drawing a picture of a judge with a very tall hat. Lena was brave in a way that didn't announce itself. She spoke clearly about the day of her termination and about the night in the alley when someone grabbed her from behind and hissed her name into her ear as if it belonged to him. She didn't cry. She also didn't pretend she wasn't afraid. Amara submitted the evidence. The anonymous staff reviews that now had names attached, the texts from Lane that chewed around consent without ever touching it, the video of the security contractor following Lena out of the hotel. The judge's mouth tightened at the video more than anything else. There are truths even people who make policy can't ignore. Lane's attorney tried to frame it as coincidence, as misunderstanding, as a manager concerned about a disgruntled former employee causing a scene. He used phrases like miscommunication and emotional woman because some playbooks never burn. Ethan hadn't planned to speak. But when Lane's attorney implied that Lena was manipulating the sympathy of powerful men, stealing their attention the way she had allegedly stolen a bracelet, Ethan stood. "Your Honor," he said, voice steady, "I'm not here because I'm manipulated. I'm here because the system behaves differently when someone like me is watching. It's not fair, but it's true. I'm willing to lend my weight to a scale that's been unbalanced for a very long time. I've seen the footage. I've read the texts. If we can't say out loud that this looks like retaliation for saying no, then we've decided we don't care what it looks like." The judge studied him for a beat, then turned back to the evidence and signed the restraining order. It was a piece of paper. It was also a line drawn. The civil case moved forward. Investigations multiplied. HR performed its own version of repentance. An internal review, a suspension, a formal apology drafted by a legal department that never used the word apology. Lane's face disappeared from the Harbor Grand website. He retained counsel of the kind that smiles without moving his eyes. Ethan expected to feel triumphant. Instead, he felt tired and very old and strongly aware that their small victory had not fixed the why. There would be other Lenas, other Mayas. He wanted fewer. That afternoon, in the quiet after the hearing, Chloe brought Maya a slice of cake and 2 neon plastic rings from a party bag long ago. "One for you," she said solemnly, "and one for your mom, so we all match." Maya slid the ring onto her finger like a ceremony. She looked at Ethan. "Are we going to be here tomorrow?" "If you want," he said. She nodded, half open. He didn't know if she meant the door or the world, maybe both. Days became a shape. Lena's bruises softened, then faded. She slept with the door half open less often. Maya laughed more, sometimes at nothing, which is the best kind of laughing. Ethan learned to make pancakes well enough that Chloe trusted them again. He also learned that he could move 3 meetings, cancel 2, and the world did not stop. He delegated more to the people he paid very well to be brilliant. He spent more time in his own kitchen than he had since Claire was alive. He also started a thing he wouldn't have started a month ago because he would have told himself it was someone else's job. A small foundation, seed money from him, operations designed by Nora and Amara together, to fund legal representation and emergency housing for single parents facing retaliation or wrongful termination. They called it Half Open House because Chloe suggested it, and no one could improve on the strange perfection of it. Lena watched all this with a complicated expression that softened a little each day. She resisted anything that felt like pity, but accepted what felt like fairness. She cried twice. Once, when she realized the turtle nightlight had been moved to Maya's room like it belonged there, and once when Maya fell asleep with both shoes off and her hand open. Ethan kept waiting for the part where this would feel like a mistake. It didn't. It felt like learning to breathe through a different lung. He and Lena did not flirt. There wasn't space for it, at first. There were forms and doctors and grocery lists and small, tired bodies to feed, but they talked. God, they talked. Late nights at the kitchen island with cold tea and warmer words. She told him about the Lena she used to be, a girl who loved numbers for the way they kept promises, who wanted to study accounting, whose plans were rerouted by a father's illness and medical bills that ate her grant. He told her about the Ethan who used to be less afraid, who skied too fast and laughed too much, and married a woman who left him recipes on sticky notes and believed he could change the world by hiring good people and letting them do their jobs. "I used to think love was a ladder," Lena said one night. "Like you climb it, and then you're above everything that can hurt you. Now I think love is a handrail. It doesn't keep you from falling, but it gives you something to hold when everything tilts." He took that sentence and carried it around for days like a stone in his pocket that warmed slowly. Spring leaned into summer. The case against Lane progressed in steps you could almost chart. Depositions, subpoenas, silences that tipped into confessions. 3 more women came forward. One man did too, describing retaliation for speaking up. The DA filed charges. Lane's attorney tried to bargain. Amara did not. In the end, there was a plea. There was a settlement that would never feel like enough, and also felt like a lot. He would never work in management again. He would pay real money to the women whose lives he had bent around his desires. He would not be allowed to step within a mile of Lena or Maya or anyone else who had testified. He would move away to a city where people didn't know his name. It was both too much and not enough, because justice is rarely precisely measured. On the day the case ended, Ethan took Lena and the girls to the park. The air smelled like grass and ice cream trucks. Chloe and Maya ran ahead and then circled back like homing birds. Lena sat on a bench with her hands quiet in her lap. She looked tired in a way that suggested the adrenaline had drained and left her with a human body to manage. "What now?" she asked, not to the park, but to the piece of sky they could see between 2 elms. "What do you want?" he asked. She laughed, a small, unbelieving sound. "I don't know if I remember how to want." "Then start small," he said. "Start with breakfast. Start with Maya's shoes off when she sleeps. Start with not looking over your shoulder when you leave a room." She nodded, then turned her head and looked at him fixedly. "And you?" He traced a line in the dirt with his shoe. "I want to be the kind of man who sits with what he can't fix and fixes what he can without announcing it like a parade." "You're already that," she said simply, as if describing weather. "Though you do buy very loud pancakes," he huffed. "Working on it?" She considered him a moment longer. "You know what I pretend when I can't sleep?" she said. "I pretend I'm at the bottom of a pool and I can see the sky, but I can't hear the noise. It's the same world, it just sounds different." "What do you see?" "Light." He nodded because he understood that better than he could explain. Maya and Chloe barreled back, breathless in the way of children who believe running is a language and love is a game of tag. "We found a turtle," Chloe announced, pointing to a rock that was very much a rock and not at all a turtle. "We named him Buttons, too." Mrs. Button would not be pleased. They ate ice cream. They got sticky. Maya fell asleep in the car with her mouth open and her hand still tight around the neon ring Chloe had given her, as if she had pledged allegiance to soft plastic and meant it. That night, the house held the weight of something like peace. Ethan stood at the sink doing dishes because it was the kind of grounding task grief had taught him, and because he enjoyed the small domesticity of it. Lena dried. They didn't talk for a while. Some silences are comfortable. This one was. He set the last plate in the rack. "Stay," he said, the word out of him before he'd decided how to decorate it. "Not because you need to, but because you can. Stay until you want to leave." Lena set the towel down carefully. "I don't want to be rescued," she said. "I know," he said, "and I don't want to rescue you. I want to live in a house with two girls who leave their socks where socks do not belong. I want to drink bad tea with you at 2 in the morning and hear about numbers. I want to buy normal amounts of pancakes. I want to be beside." She drew in a breath like someone stepping onto a moving train. "Okay," she said, and then smiled, as if the word surprised her. "Okay." He didn't kiss her then. It would have been wrong. He did brush his hand over hers, a small, quiet, respectful thing, and then put the towel in the laundry basket and turned out the light. Weeks built themselves into a life without asking for permission. Lena found a part-time job at a community center through a friend of Amara's, helping single parents navigate paperwork and find housing. She was good at it, the way some people are born with maps in their bones. Maya started at a new school and made a friend named Pilar who could do a handstand for 23 seconds. Chloe and Maya learned to fight like sisters and make up like diplomats. Mrs. Button accepted that there were now 2 small humans whose laps were available but whose feet were sometimes in the wrong place. Nora learned to schedule board meetings around school pickups. Ethan learned that leaving early was a power move he hadn't known he could use. One morning, a plain envelope sat by his coffee cup, his name on the front in a careful hand. He opened it to find a drawing. 6 figures holding hands, Chloe with a purple bow, Maya with a turtle nightlight floating above her like a second moon, Mrs. Button scowling in the corner, Ethan tall, Lena with her hair long, and in the middle, between Ethan and Lena, a small heart drawn like a sticker. Above them, in block letters, Maya had printed family. The A was slightly crooked. It made everything truer. He carried the drawing to Lena, who stood at the kitchen window with a mug and the look of a person who had learned to recognize her life as belonging to her again. "We've been issued a decree," he said, and showed her. Her eyes flashed wet, then soft. "They make it sound easy," she said. "Maybe it is," he said, and then, "Marry me." The mug clinked against the counter. She did not laugh. She did not go silent with shock. She set her hand on the drawing as if to steady herself and him and the world. "You ask like a person asking for a job reference," she said, a smile blooming slow. "No kneeling?" "I tried kneeling once," he said. "It made my ankle hurt, and Claire laughed so hard she cried." Lena's smile tilted to something like a memory that belonged to someone else but felt like her own. "I can't be what you had," she said. "I won't be." "I don't want what I had," he said. "I want what we have. I want this house with half-open doors and too much tea and neon rings that mean nothing and everything. I want to promise you that I will not fix you. I will build you a chair when you're tired. I will make dinner badly and accept instructions. I will be kind when I am wrong and kinder when I am right. I will never make you small to make myself big. I will never, ever ask Maya to sleep with her shoes on." Her eyes closed for a second like you do when you let a wave break over you and choose not to fight it. She opened them, and they were steadier than his heart. "Yes," she said, "yes." They married in the backyard under a canopy of fairy lights Chloe insisted were non-negotiable. Amara cried and denied it. Nora brought a cake that tasted like lemon and a little like victory. Dr. Fernandez danced with her wife. Mrs. Button preferred to sit under a chair and judge the proceedings. It was small and quiet, and perfect in the way of things you don't expect to have once you've convinced yourself you have had all the perfect you're allowed. Ethan did not promise to protect Lena. He promised to stand beside her long after it was fashionable to stand anywhere. Lena did not promise to follow. She promised to interrupt him when he steamrolled and to hand him his phone when he forgot to call his mother. They both promised that half-open doors would be a sacrament, not a compromise. When they were pronounced everything you can be to each other in front of witnesses, Chloe and Maya threw petals so enthusiastically the neighbor's dog sneezed. It felt like a benediction. The first night as a family, the house changed, and didn't. The turtle nightlight glowed. A painting shifted an inch left because Lena thought it should, and Ethan discovered she was right. The door to Maya's room stayed half open as always, but the space between the rooms felt different, like a field no one would have to cross alone again. Months passed. Half-open house grew from a seed to a tree. Ethan made a habit of meeting the clients he could meet because shame withers under attention. Lena took on a full-time role at the center. She went back to school part-time because Chloe insisted school was where your brain became a superhero. Maya learned to swim and then to jump from the low board with a shriek that sounded like joy. Chloe learned to tie her shoes in a new double-knot way taught by Maya, who said the knot didn't come undone even in nightmares. One afternoon, Ethan found an email in his inbox from a donor who had been a skeptic and now wanted in. "I used to think money and kindness were separate," the email read. "You convinced me they can be the same thing when used like a tool, not a metal." He forwarded it to Lena with a note. "We're building a toolbox." She replied with a photo of Maya and Chloe building a pillow fort and a caption, "We're also building a fort." On an ordinary Tuesday that felt like a victory, Ethan picked up the girls from school. They argued cheerfully in the back seat about whether turtles could wear hats. The light at the corner turned red. A woman sat on the curb under a billboard for watches that cost more than rent. She was not asleep, but she was close. She had a child beside her with a hand-drawn sign that read, "Hungry." The world didn't stop to notice. Chloe reached for the window control. "Daddy," she said, voice steady, "can we help?" He pulled to the side without thinking because it had ceased to be a question. He reached back for the bag of granola bars and the bottles of water that had become standard issue in his car. He got out and met the woman's eyes the way people rarely do when they don't have a solution that fits in a sentence. "We have food," he said, "and we can do more than food if you want." The woman's chin lifted like a flag. "Nobody wants this kind of more." "We do," he said, handing her his card, and the granola and the water, and the name of the center where Lena worked on the back of a receipt. "If you show up there, someone will say your name like it matters." Maya slid out of the car with Chloe and handed the child a neon ring from the bottom of her backpack, the last one from the party bag. "For you," she said seriously, "so we match." Ethan watched the exchange and thought of all the ways people hold each other up with the smallest, silliest things, the way a ring made of cheap plastic can say, "You are wanted," in a language that doesn't require grammar. Back in the car, they drove on. Ethan's hands on the wheel felt steady and alive. He caught Lena's eyes in his mind the way you catch the edge of a favorite song accidentally and know you'll listen to the rest of it all day. That night, after homework and dinner and a startlingly competitive game of chutes and ladders, Maya fell asleep with her door half open and her shoes not only off, but under the bed, a small, defiant act against a world that had asked too much from her small feet. Chloe dreamed with her mouth open and her hair across her pillow like a flag. Ethan and Lena sat on the porch steps under a sky that had the decency to be clear. The city breathed around them, not louder than the house, but in conversation with it. "You ever think about how it all started?" Lena asked, "that day on the sidewalk?" He laughed softly. "Every day." "What if we'd been on the other side of the street?" "Then Chloe would have made me cross." Lena smiled. "Yes." He looked toward the half-open door and thought of a question that had been answered and then re-asked every day since. The why that Rosalind had warned him could take longer than the where. He didn't know why things happen the way they do, not really. He knew only this. When Chloe asked him why a child was sleeping on the ground, he had said yes to a version of himself that remembered how to be unruly in the face of rules that hurt the wrong people. He reached for Lena's hand. "Tomorrow," he said. She threaded her fingers through his. "Tomorrow." They sat until the porch light hummed and the night cooled and the quiet felt like a bowl they could live within. When they finally went inside, he left the door half open behind them. The house was not a fortress exactly. It was not a glass room. It was a place made for resting, for waking, for finding. A place where no child needed to sleep in her shoes. A place where the door stayed half open so light could find its way in. And those inside could find their way out to meet it.